Welcome to So True, and today's devotional is entitled Lost for Words, and it comes from the text of Romans 8, 26 to 28. Let me take time to read those verses. Likewise, the Spirit also helps in our weaknesses, for we do not know what we should pray for as we ought, but the Spirit himself makes intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. Now he who searches the hearts knows what the mind of the Spirit is, because he makes intercession for the saints according to the will of God. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose. As a man was leaving church, he stopped to talk to his pastor, and he said this, "Pastor, you are smarter than Albert Einstein." The pastor blushed and replied, "Smarter than Einstein? Einstein was one of the smartest men who ever lived. What makes you think that I'm smarter than Einstein?" the pastor went on to say. In answer, the man replied, "Well, Einstein was so smart that when he spoke, people could only understand 5% of what he said. But when you speak, Pastor, people cannot understand anything you say." Oops. But here's the point. Lack of clarity and comprehension is a problem, not only in preaching, but in praying. Paul, in his letter to the Romans, acknowledges that there are times in the Christian's life where there is a failure to communicate our heart's desire to God in a given set of circumstances. We know we ought to pray, right? Luke 18, verse 1. But there are days and there are times when we don't know what we ought to pray. That's Romans 8, verse 26, which we just read. Life leaves us scratching our heads. We stand stir crazy at some crossroads in life, not knowing what to ask from God. Our thoughts are all jumbled up, leaving us tongue-tied before the throne of grace. I don't know if that's been your experience, but in such cases, our garbled prayers are due to the fact that we live in a fallen world as finite creatures. This passage in Romans 8 places a groaning Christian in the midst of a groaning creation. You can look at that in verses 20 to 23 and verse 26 of Romans 8. It's hard to know what to pray for in an upside-down world. It's hard to know what to pray for in an upside-down world. Besides a fallen world, we are stumped by our own weakness, which speaks to our blindness towards the mystery of God's providence. We know that he works all things together for good, but we don't know how, and we don't know what's best for us and what constitutes God's best. Sometimes God's best can be a bad thing that he works for our good, Romans 8:28. But that's hard to anticipate, that's hard to know, therefore hard to pray for. There are times when, because of our world and because of our weakness, we just sigh. That's all we can do. We grunt, we groan. Our prayers become nothing more than a whimper. The good news of our text is that when you and I find ourselves lost for words, the Spirit of God, who causes us to pray in the first place, prays for us. That's the great truth of Romans 8, 14 to 17, 26 to 27. We cry, Abba, Father, through the Spirit, and when we don't know what to pray, he prays for us. The marvel of our passage is that the third person of the Trinity is said to become our prayer partner. Our weak prayers trigger his strong appeals on our behalf. When you and I are without words, the Spirit makes intercession before us, before the Father in heaven, with divine articulations or groanings too deep for words. Our groaning in a broken world produces his groaning on our behalf. How marvelous, how encouraging. He is indeed the divine paraclete who has been called alongside to comfort us. And that's a comfort. Watch this. The Spirit of God knows us completely, and God knows the mind of the Spirit perfectly. Therefore, that which we cannot put in the words is presented to God according to the will of God by the Spirit of God on our behalf. That's in Romans 8:27. Take a look at it. The Spirit, if I could put it this way, the Spirit fixes our prayers on the way up so that God hears our prayers made better and perfectly expressed by the Spirit of God. It's good to know that God hears us even when we are without words.